Hey there, ladies and gentlemen, it's Jeff, and welcome to Terror Loves Decay and Rot. That's right, it's the TLDR podcast. Welcome to the show, Daniel.
Hey Jeff, how are you today?
I'm pretty excited for today because horror is weird.
Oh yeah, I was going to start the episode going, good evening, boils and ghouls.
Boils and ghouls?
Yeah, but I obviously couldn't pull it off, so yeah. No, it's doing pretty great. We had a very, very busy week, still managed to get in some playtime, and I'm going to cover it a little bit later, but I did manage to break into the Freddy's Pizzeria Simulator, and boy, I tell you, it was an experience.
Okay, well, what did you do this week?
Yeah, like I said, I played Freddy's Pizzeria, played Warcraft Classic. I did have a business trip this past week, so I wasn't able to get in quite as much time playing as I had hoped. I was away for 2 days, well, actually more like 3 after you factor in travel time, so yeah, was pretty wiped out. Played a couple of phone games, nothing too noteworthy. How about yourself?
I continued to play Mario and Castlevania on my phone. The Castlevania game tricked me. I'm usually, if I put more than 5 hours into a phone game, I usually drop $5 or $10, and I usually don't go any further than that. It's just a courtesy, like, thanks for entertaining me kind of like sum, and
Right.
So the Mario Run game, you can defeat the first world for free, and then to unlock the rest of the game, you have to pay, I think it was $13. So I did that, and then for Castlevania, I was just going to buy some gems. And the gems are, like I said in the last episode, I said I didn't really feel any draw to buy gems, but I bought them out of what I just explained, just like a personal obligation to, like, give them thanks for having an entertaining game, because it's the kind of game that, like, I'm sure it slows down later on, but I've probably put about 8 hours into the game, and I'm still at that point where if I play the levels constant, like if I play each, like, just the way it works, you can beat a level and then repeat that level for, like, crafting materials, but if each time you repeat it, you actually receive like 10% of the initial experience from the first run. So the game encourages you to keep doing more and more, like, brand new levels. So you get
rather than just grinding out the same content over and over.
Right. So, but when you just push it like that, and you push out all this new level, you level up constantly, and of course each time you level up, it fully refills your energy. And so I never run out of energy. And it's really, like, honestly, like, there's no point where it's like, hey, you've run out of energy, buy some gems so you can make more energy. It never does that to me, because I constantly have energy. So I'm like, this is awesome. I don't have to worry about, like, these stupid paywalls to just play a game. And it also has this thing. Sorry?
How far into the game are you?
I'm on to the 3rd grimoire, and each grimoire is like a world in Mario, for example. There's just a certain amount of levels, and I don't know how many grimoires there are.
So you'd think that if there was going to be a slowdown, you'd have hit it by now.
Right. So one other thing is, I've experienced this in other RPG type mobile games, where when you beat a level, you can skip the level, and when you skip the level, you get like just a paltry amount of experience, and it's just like an item farm, and the items that are worth picking up are like really, really low drop chance, and it's a way to sort of dump all of your energy when you're, like, going to bed at night or something like that, and it's just a gamble of if you're going to get anything good out of it. With Castlevania, every single time I do this, like, I choose skip, and I skip the level 15 times. You can choose how many times you want to skip it all at once, and then it just accumulates the total of items you got from skipping it 15 times, and every single time I get like a very good, like a decent amount of that the rarest item from that level, and so it really it's awesome. Like I said, like I'll play it like usually when I go to bed at night. I'll play it for like 10 or 15 minutes. I'll play a couple levels. I'm like, okay, I'm good for now. Waste the rest, just dump the rest of my energy into skipping levels, and that just gets me just scores of ingredients that I need to upgrade my items, enchant items, etc. like that. And so yeah, it's just it's shockingly consistent with how often I can play. Instead of usually with games, when you run out of energy and you don't have gems or whatever to refill your energy, you're just like, okay, I literally can't play the game anymore. And Castlevania hasn't done that to me.
It sounds like it's worth a look.
Yeah, and especially since the game just first came out just a couple weeks ago, it's doing this like this release, like every game does it nowadays with mobile phones at least, where the first couple games that the game releases, it offers login bonuses, and it gives you just truckloads of gems and stuff to keep playing their game. So I'm just getting, I don't even have to pay for money or pay for gems and stuff like that anyway. So it's all around, it's great.
It's funny because I've mentioned the golf game that I have on my phone, and it does something very similar. It gives you, on a semi-regular schedule, like every 4, 8, or 12 hours, you get like access to these treasure chests that you get to open up, and inside of almost every treasure chest, there's that gem currency that you can use to unlock extra clubs and unlock, new golf balls that go further or more accurate or whatever. And it's just like, I don't, unless I really want to just drop a ton of money and rocket myself into leagues that I have no business being into because everybody is way better than me, there's no point for me to spend any money on the gems because I just get them organically.
Yeah. And I still haven't come across a competitive aspect of this game either. It's still either a choice of solo campaign mode or multiplayer co-op. And the co-op is sort of, it's competitive in the sense that you each accrue a score as you go through the level, and you get ranked based on that score. But if the other 3 players die and the 4th player isn't strong enough to finish the level, they'll die too, and nobody wins anything. So it's you're sort of, even though you're competing for points, you're encouraged to help each other out, keep each other alive, kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So it's very interesting. Mario is awesome. I can foresee like at least 60 hours out of this game. It has 6 worlds. And each world only has 3 levels and then the castle. But each level can be played at least 3 times, and it takes some of those levels just... I was... There was the burp. I was holding back a burp before recording. It just attacked me.
Oh, that's exciting. This is quality radio right here.
No, there's some levels that were just so challenging to get a coin that I spent like 2 or 3 hours trying, like, just doing the same level over and over and over again. But if you're not in the mood for farming the coins, you can ignore them altogether. And each level takes between 30 seconds and a minute to do. And then there's this remix mode where you really quickly play through 10 levels, and each level is like a 10-second level. And it's just like, and you go through 10 levels, and then at the end of this remix mode, it's like 30 areas later. Each area, I think, is 20 remix levels, and then there's 30 areas. And at the end of the 30 areas, you can unlock Daisy as a character to play.
Oh, cool.
So I have right now, for purchasing the game, I was rewarded with Luigi as a character, and Luigi acts the same as he does in Super Mario 2 for the NES, where when he jumps, he sort of hovers a little bit before it comes back down, and he jumps a little bit higher.
Right.
So obviously each character is going to have their own little like quirk to them, I'm not sure if Bowser will ever be a playable character because he is actually the villain in the game. But you never know. It would be cool to have Bowser though, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. He'd be similar to Yoshi, except instead of spitting a tongue out and sucking things in, he'd just shoot this giant flame gout in front of him and just roast all the Goombas.
Yeah.
I want to see that.
So that's just mobile gaming, or well, phone games at least. I've also been playing whatchamacallit, Chrono Trigger still. I haven't been playing it nearly as much as I was at first. I probably only put an hour or two into it this week, and it was just grinding out levels. Because I'm for those interested in where I am, I'm trying to say it without spoiling for people who've never played the game before. I'm in the I'm in the underwater palace.
Okay.
I just got past that point, and that's sort of where you. No, I'm not gonna say anything else. I have a
Too risky.
Even though the game's like 30 years old, I have this like desperate hope that one day Daniel will play it. Either by me visiting and forcing him to play it, or him doing it on his own. So
yeah, it's possible. It's possible. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, so I'm just holding on hope to that. That's why I'm not spoiling anything, because the story is just so good. So anyway, but
it's available on Steam, right?
Is it?
Is it? That's my question. Is it available on Steam?
I don't know. Looking up. Now it is. Interesting. It's $20 on Steam. That's weird.
It's not such a huge barrier to entry.
Yeah. Huh. Never knew. So anyway, other than that, I've been obviously playing World of Warcraft a lot. My druid is level 35 now. My paladin's still 23. My hunter's like 24 or 25. My druid makes so much money that I was able to respec my mage. Okay, so it costed 15 gold for my mage to respec and make her playable again. So I funded her, and then I still had like 25 gold left over. So I was like, I have crappy gear because I've been leveling in low level zones, and I want to do Gnomeregan. So I bought a full set of just greens, but they're each pretty expensive on their own. A full set of green gear for her that was her level. So that was all of the owl gear. So she has equal parts intellect and spirit. So she's like a monster healer with a lot of regen. It's really nice. And then after that, I still had like 15 gold left over to level up my alchemy. And then through alchemy leveling up, I had made like 80 swiftness potions. They're just little level 5 potions or whatever it is, but they sell for a lot on the auction house. So I made back all the money I had spent just selling that. And it just makes me want to go out and pick the flowers required for that potion, because it's a huge money maker. So yeah, I've just, even though she's a healer, I'm still going strong with the quest everything method of doing. I bounce between Night Elf Zone to Human and Dwarf Zones, etc. And right now I just finished Wetlands, but I've done like Stonetown Mountains, Ashen Vale, Dark Shore, and Teldrassil, obviously. And then I've done Elwyn Forest, Westfall, Duskwood, Redridge Mountains for the Human area, and then I've done Dunmoreau, Lochmardan, and Wetlands. And I'm
Holy
34, 35 right now. So
that's I wonder what your slash played is on that character.
Well, that's what's really interesting, is because our mutual friends are like struggling to keep up with me, because like Braden had a whole week off where he just blitzed the game constantly, and he still wasn't able to keep up with me. So I'm not sure if that's because Braden it's a relatively new experience, vanilla, or if it's because this is actually a decent method. Because sure, I'm way higher level, but the way experience sort of diminishes in quests in World of Warcraft. It like you once you're a level beyond the, like, let's say it's a level 25 quest. Once you become level 26, you lose like 300 experience from that quest. But then for the next like 8 levels, you don't lose anything. And then it's not until like 9 or 10 levels above the quest that you lose like 90% of the experience.
Right, when they turn gray.
It's even after that. It's some, because they turn gray at 6 levels above, and it's not until I'm like 9 or 10 levels above that they just go drastically downhill for experience rewards. So as long as I stay in that gray-green area where I can still just crush the monsters as a healer, where I'm leveling or killing rather slowly, I can crush all the monsters and still get an appropriate amount of experience. So I figure I'm gonna start. I actually started leveling my warrior because my main in the retail version is a Draenei warrior, and I didn't want to recreate him in classic because there is no Draenei. I wanted to stay true to the character, etc., etc. But then I was like, well, whatever. It's classic. I'm not gonna get access to a Draenei anytime soon, so I just created a human warrior. I initially he was a night elf warrior, but human warriors have sword and mace specialization, so they get just a little bit higher skill level with those 2 weapons, one-handed and two-handed variants. And so I was like, well, I want to make this version of, because my Draenei version is a tank through and through, and it has been since like day 1 of Burning Crusade. Oh no, well, since level cap of Burning Crusade. But this character, I'm like, no, I'm not going to tank. I've done that enough. I want to be DPS, so I'm going to go full Fury and just go as crazy as possible. And I think I'm going to do it the same way I did it with my Druid. And if I'm doing that with a DPS, I'm going to fly through like 10 times faster anyway. So, yeah.
Okay, time out. You're going full Fury, which I've caught some flack. Did you hear that squeaky door?
I thought it was a child screaming.
My apologies. I have a child getting up to use the washroom, so if you hear anything untoward in the background, you'll understand why. So when I excuse me, when I started playing my current warrior in retail, I'm also playing as a Fury spec, and I was catching a lot of flack from people that I would level with, because they're like, oh, Fury is subpar, and it's not the way to go, and if you're going to go Fury, you should be 1 two-handed weapon instead of 2 one-handed weapons. And like a lot of people were getting on my case over that, and I was just curious to know what you're kind of building, because I know you're kind of a min-max kind of guy. So I'm wondering how you're building your talent tree around your Fury warrior.
Well, my warrior's only level 7 so far. I just started leveling up.
Okay. I see.
But it's curious to me that you're getting flack for choosing Fury, because now I may be wrong on this, and somebody out there might know, but I seem to recall the absolute, like, the top 25 people on my realm on Earthen Ring when I played vanilla. Of the top 25 people on the realm, 23 of them were Fury warriors.
Oh my gosh! All right. So I just accidentally stumbled into the right one then.
I'm not sure if that was a crazy coincidence, or if Fury is like just the absolute best for top end stuff. But I figure, let's just go with it.
Because do you get Titan's Grip until Burning Crusade, or do you get it before Burning Crusade?
No. Titan's Grip is like Cataclysm.
No, I remember
two-handed weapons.
Yeah, I seem to remember people running around like that in like Netherstorm.
Titan's Grip added. This is talk, man.
Cut to commercial break.
It was added at level 40 in Wrath of the Lich King.
Wrath of the Lich King.
Well, the patch 3.02, like, it was still Burning Crusade, but it was the Wrath patch.
Okay. So it was kind of right in between.
Yeah.
Your guess and mine. Interesting. Yeah, because I'm like, so I'm going to get to max level, and I'm still going to have two one-handed weapons. But I suppose if I have like Thunder Fury, two Thunder Furies, I could be okay with it.
Well, Thunder Fury's a unique weapon. So.
Oh, well, this is unbelievable. I don't know what I'm going to do now. Reroll.
But no, I've been planning my warrior out. I've been like, it's the same with my paladin. Like my paladin, I built gear for him up to level 40, so he's got it made in the shade. Same with my warrior. I want my warrior to have like the easiest level of experience possible. I mailed him all of my cloth, all the linen I was getting, all the wool, and all the silk I was getting, and then I snuck into that Strongguard Keep in Arathi Highlands to get him the first aid booklets and stuff like that to learn other recipes, and I sent it all to him, and so now he's a level 7 warrior with like a 226 first aid skill. So it's funny because I'll be like, I was just in the Fargo Deep mines or whatever they're called, fighting a whole bunch of dudes, and I had like 6 dudes on me, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna die. And then a player ran through and put 1 heal on me, and it pulled 2 of them off, but then they all struck me again, and I went down to like 2% health, and I'm like, oh, I'm dead. But then they all started to bleed and fled in terror, and in like the 2 seconds that they were running and like one was coming back to me, I used first aid and got full health because I had like a thick silk bandage, and I was like, yeah.
Oh no.
So yeah, it was pretty cool.
Excellent.
Yeah. So that's my warrior. I'm really excited about leveling him up. I'm gonna do a 2-handed play up until level 20 when I get dual wield, and then I'm just gonna go full dual wield from there. And hopefully by then some of our friends will be higher level and will be able to, rush me through some dungeons, just to get some specific loot. And then another thing. So with me in the past, I listened to System of it. Oh well, let's do this in order. When I first started playing World of Warcraft, I didn't listen to music. It wasn't until Burning Crusade daily quests that I started to listen to music while playing the game. And I would listen to Linkin Park and Evanescence. And those 2 bands I listened to so much while playing World of Warcraft that every time I play a Burning Crusade zone in World of Warcraft, I get like an auditory flashback of that music. So World of Warcraft actually directly reminds me of Evanescence and Linkin Park.
It's funny that you mentioned that because I have the opposite experience. I'll hear a song that I remember I listened to one time while I was playing this game, and then like I'll hear it again and I'll be like, oh, that reminds me of this game, which is completely unrelated, but the fact that I listened to it while I was playing that, just brings me back.
Yeah. I get that with one specific song that's completely unrelated. It's called One Winged Angel, which is the theme song for Sephiroth in Final Fantasy VII. It's a really badass song, and when I read manga online, I usually play one specific song, because what happened was I was so hooked. I have this weird thing where if I find a song that I really like, especially on YouTube or something where you can like just loop it, I will just loop it for like 2 or 3 hours. Especially if it's a longer song. If it's like a 12-minute song, for some reason I'm okay with just like, especially if it's a really good song, I can just loop it a lot in a row, like a little kid watching the same movie over and over again. Like I don't know the psychology behind it, but I love doing that sometimes.
Well, it's essentially what video game designers do, right? When they put soundtrack in, they'll usually just have it keep looping, and you can spend. I'm thinking of like the Halo 3 login screen, not the login screen, but like the initial splash up screen when you first load the game up, and you hear the Covenant da 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 da. That track.
Right. That
track just loops endlessly in that screen, and you never get. Well, I never got tired of it.
Right. So there's a song called One Winged Angel. It's like an 8 or 9 minute song. It's meant for Final Fantasy VII when you're fighting Sephiroth at the very end of the game. And that's how I knew the song for the longest time. and then I was reading One Piece online, and One Piece is the kind of manga that it's so thick with story that you sort of get bogged down by it, and then every now and then you get some action sequence that's like super badass, and you're like, holy crap! So the story is really good, but there's a lot of it. It's really, really thick with story, and then there's the occasional action sequence. And usually when the action starts, it lasts for a long time, but until the action starts, it can be a little bit slow. So to fill out the slow sequences, I just listened to One Wing Angel on repeat while I was reading it, and it became so synonymous with me with reading One Piece that every time I hear the song now, instead of thinking of Final Fantasy VII, I think of One Piece. Even though I've played hundreds of hours of Final Fantasy VII, and I love the song because of it, it's just association. I've put more association into One Piece, I guess. Anyway, I don't know how we got there. Oh yes, so I throughout the ages of World of Warcraft, I listened to various bands. So I started with Linkin Park, and moved into Evanescence, and then through Wrath and Cataclysm, I listened to System of a Down, and they're pretty crazy, and I got pretty hooked on them. But when I was trying to play World of Warcraft this week, I tried to go back to Linkin Park and Evanescence, and I've sort of grown out of those bands and stuff, and it just I couldn't get into the rhythm of it listening to those songs. So I was like, I gotta find something else. And then I found the 25th anniversary, it's like the Zelda 25th anniversary like symphony, and it's like a 40-minute compilation of all these like refinished songs for the entire franchise, and every single song is absolutely stunning. It's awesome. And so while I was listening to that, I'm like, this music's awesome, and I was enjoying myself playing, and then I found myself madly addicted or craving playing Zelda. And so I was like, okay, I need to take a step back and figure out how many Zelda games I own and how realistic it is to go through them all. So at Thanksgiving, I got my Wii back from my parents, and my Wii has the virtual version of the first 3 Zeldas on the NES. I have A Link to the Past on that Wii, I believe. And then I have Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask on my 3DS. And then I was like, okay. And then I have Wind Waker HD on my Wii U. And then I have Twilight Princess and Skyward Sword on the Wii. And then I have nothing else. And then I looked up Breath of the Wild, and I have no idea how I didn't know this, but Breath of the Wild released for the Wii U and the Switch. So I've had access to Breath of the Wild this whole time, and I just didn't get it. So now I'm like, dang. And then I realized that I owned every other Zelda game other than the handheld versions, and I was like, I'm not going to play through them all, but I'm definitely going to sit down. I'm going to play Ocarina of Time through. I'm going to play Majora's Mask through. Then I'm probably going to play maybe I'll play through Wind Waker, but I'm definitely going to play through Twilight Princess and Skyward Sword. Cause I never beat Skyward Sword, and I sort of feel bad about that because that game was actually really good. And then obviously play Breath of the Wild. I just had to buy it online, so that'll be fun when I get the chance. I can also get Twilight Princess HD on the Wii U, which I might do as well, just because the Wii requires a TV, and I don't own a TV. So I was trying to get around that little hiccup, and it turns out the Wii U can, other than Skyward Sword, the Wii U can play everything the Wii can. I'm not sure if it's
weird to me that you don't have a TV.
Well, it's just I do most of my things at the computer. It was kind of pointless.
No, I get it for sure. It's just strange to me that you've never picked one up. We just while we're talking about TVs, real quickly, one of my children threw a Wii remote through my last TV, which we just kind of left downstairs for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, maybe a month.
That's like a guilt trip.
It was no. I mean, the kid that did it is not even 2 yet, so he doesn't understand what he did.
Oh.
So it wasn't a guilt thing. The TV still worked. It just had like 8 inches out of the 55 inches were kind of like, well, not kind of. They were very badly destroyed.
Okay.
An 8-inch strip that went, vertically. Anyways, I said this was going to be fast, and it's. Why did I bring that up? We were
Good
talking
one.
about. What were we talking about? TVs. Surprised that you don't have a TV.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, they're ridiculously cheap right now for 4K TV. I just picked up a 50-inch Samsung 4K TV for my basement, and it was $429.
Damn.
Yeah,
That is good.
Yeah, it's really cheap. Best Buy in Edmonton.
Wow.
So go check it out.
Well,
We are
I
not
just broke my
sponsored by Best
phone,
Buy.
so I'm currently broke. So, yeah.
Oh, that's too bad.
But yeah, I'm getting such a craving to play Zelda, just because it's the whole franchise is awesome, and it's just, yeah, it's fun. So I'm really looking forward to that. The reason I didn't start this week, well, there's not really a reason. I was gonna do it chronologically, so do Ocarina of Time first, and then Majora's Mask. But the reason I didn't start yet is because I can connect wirelessly to the internet with my Wii U, but I can't remember my wireless password. So instead of resetting my router and phoning Shaw and being like, how to get it working again, and doing all that nonsense, I was just like, I'm just going to wire connect to everything. But on the back of the Wii U, this is so weird to me, because the Wii has an Ethernet connector on the back, so you can plug directly into the internet. The Wii U doesn't. So you have to get a USB conversion box that has an Ethernet connector on one side and a USB on the other in order to connect wired to the internet. So the Wii U comes with this, but I've searched through everything I own and I can't find that piece. So I basically have to go to a store and just get a conversion piece. But so until that happens, I can't get Wind Waker or Twilight Princess HD or Breath of the Wild, unless I want to buy them physically. But I'm not sure if Wii U titles are even still sold in stores. So that's another challenge in itself, because the Wii U was enough of a failure that it's not really. It's probably not stocked very much. But at the same time, even though it was a failure of a console, and it's sort of like Switch, where you can play it anywhere in the house, it's weird to me, because the Switch is a monstrous success. The Wii U is obviously a weaker system as far as power goes, but you can still play it anywhere you want in the house. You can't go outside because it's attached to the console. Like, the console is the power that's transferring, like, wirelessly the information to the screen, right? So if you go too far away, it's just going to lose connection. But otherwise, it's like, I looked up the specs for Breath of the Wild on the Wii U, and apparently it performs just as well as the Switch. I kept actually finding conflicting information. Some of the information said, well, the Switch is 30 frames per second on the handheld device and 60 frames per second on the TV. Meanwhile, the Wii U is 60 frames per second on the handheld device. And I was like, oh, damn, that's better than the Switch? But then other information said the complete reverse, where it was like 30 frames per second on the Wii U and 60 frames per second on the Switch. And I was like, okay, so I don't know exactly, but what I am sort of figuring out from all these different sources of information is that the Wii U performs about the same as the Switch. So, and there are minor graphic differences, but they're so minor that unless you're a real critical person when it comes to like cell shading and certain graphics and everything like that, unless you know what you're looking for differences, it's actually kind of difficult to spot the differences. So, yeah. So I'm looking forward to that. I don't know when I'm going to fit it in, because, like I said, the Mario and the Castlevania on the phone are really good, and then the World of Warcraft on the computer is sucking a lot of my time right now, and I don't know when I'm going to get bored of that. Right now my life is just surrounded by good games, and I'm complaining because I want to play other good games. Like it's weird. So that was my week, and that was like a half hour.
yeah, you led a pretty busy week. Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, when I was kind of prepping for this show, I've come up with a whole crap ton of news, but I'm going to scrap or at least push off most of it until next week. But I just wanted to bring up real quickly kind of an exciting piece of news if you're a Sony fan, a PlayStation fan. Very recently, I'd say within the last couple of days, or even the last few hours while I record this, the PS5 console has been, like, photos of the console itself, at least a prototype, has been leaked, and they appear to be pretty legitimate. So what I found was on, let me see if I can pull it up real quick on my phone here. It's on a website called, did I must have closed it. Shoot, sorry about that. Yeah. But anyways, I was going to show you the photo because it was really neat. It was a V-shaped kind of top to the console. The bottom where all the major hardware is held is still.
I wouldn't say V-shaped. It's like pants-shaped.
At the bottom where all the hardware is housed, it's still quite rectangularly shaped. But on top, it is shaped like the letter V or the Roman numeral 5.
Or a pair of pants.
Not like a pair of pants. But it is quite striking. I'm not going to lie. Nice and bright colors there.
It's pretty sleek, yeah.
What I really wanted to draw attention to was on the front, there was a circular eye, almost like a camera-looking thing, on the front of the console. And my question is, like, is the intent for this to be kind of their motion tracking device? Is it going to be for console streaming, like 4K streaming? Is it going to be like what's their intent behind that? A little bit of speculation, because if it's for streaming, if it's meant for streaming, then you're really pigeonholed into where you're going to put your console, right? You have to put it directly in front of your or maybe not directly in front, but it has to be pointed right at you. So you have to set up your streaming that little nest that you make to stream in. You have to set that up so it's pointing right at you. And I don't know. I'm not sure how that's going to work. I think it's meant just for like the motion capture thing, like the one on the PlayStation 4 has.
This eye you speak of, is it on the right side?
Yes.
The picture I'm looking at is that's the power button.
Are you sure?
That's what the picture has, that power icon. The totally typical straight line through the circle power icon.
Let me forgive the key clicks here. PS5 leak. So as I'm reading, Games Radar, that's what it's called. Sorry for being so loud. Mm-hmm.
In the midst of all this, ladies and gentlemen, is
the
Canadian election that we're all following very closely. And Daniel, the Conservative team has more votes right now.
You should be careful about how you're giving away your political thing.
I don't give a crap what people think of me.
I'm sure you don't. Oh yeah, I see it. There you go.'re right. You're absolutely right. It does look like the power button. Also worth mentioning is that there are two what they're calling init ports. Have you ever heard of an init port?
Isn't that what like English people say? How you doing, init?
I think that's idjit. No, I had never heard of that before. I actually had to look it up. And an init port, I guess, stands for Initialized Serial Communication Port.
Obviously.
Right? Why didn't I just intuit that? Which enables one to connect with the network controllers. So one of them is labeled system, another one is labeled network. So I guess it's a common hookup to run diagnostics from, if I understand things correctly.
Now, I hate to draw you away from this, but did they show the PS5 controller?
Not that I saw. Not on this leak, anyways. Why?
Just curious.
Yeah. No. The last thing, kind of really strange to me, is that on the front of this thing, it has 6 USB ports. 6 of them.
Right.
So I guess why? Right. I guess with everything moving,
Now,
moving to wireless, why would you need 6 USB ports?
I only see 5. But regardless, it might be more for storage.
Okay, removable storage, sure, but I don't know. 6 though?
It could be to plug in a mouse and keyboard. You say wireless, but some of those wireless mouse and keyboard have that little USB connector for the receptor thing.
Oh, that's right. And the one port beside the one I was counting as a 6, when I zoom in really closely, I see that it appears to be a Ethernet connection, maybe.
Okay.
Some sort of a network port, anyways. So maybe not 5, maybe not 6, just 5, but still. And then of course it's got the standard reset and eject and whatever else. So yeah, it was just kind of neat. Kind of some light news. Everything else that I wanted to talk about is pretty heavy stuff, so we'll push that off to another time.
Yeah, because we're almost out of time. No, we're not. But yeah, I feel like I should probably do my bit first, and then we can switch to Daniel.
Sure.
So I feel like I need to preface this episode with my history of the horror genre in all mediums. I mean, I read The Shining when I was in high school, mostly because my dad, he just went on and on about the movie. So I felt this strange curiosity about the book. I gotta say, though, for me, horror doesn't really translate on paper. I never feel any amount of terror from reading. And that's different from suspense. I can feel dread from suspense while reading, but not terror. And I don't know. So as far as book reading goes and horror, it just doesn't translate. And that I've always been interested in reading like Stephen King stuff like that. But yeah, at least for The Shining, it didn't get me. I didn't even get it at all. So I'm not sure if you've ever read any horror.
I can't say that I have. Stephen King's The Shining is a very, very popular title, so I probably will get into it at some point. I have a hard time with horror, I'm not gonna lie, and we can get into it a little bit more later, but just chalk it up to saying that I have a strong aversion to being scared.
Right, and I think a lot of us out there certainly agree with me in this statement. Is, for me personally, horror has an adverse effect on me because I have such an overactive imagination. That's never changed in my entire life. I was super hyperactive with my imagination when I was a kid. Like, the bus stop from our house was probably about a 20-second walk from the door, and it would take me about 20 minutes to get home because I was so wrapped up in my own little world when I was a little kid. So that's insert that imagination into every version of me growing up watching any kind of horror movie and stuff like that. It just not great. So the first thing I want to bring up is E.T. E.T. isn't a horror movie, but it was probably the first moment in my entire life that I felt terror from a work of fiction. Because there's one moment, well, there's 2 moments in it for me, and there's 1 moment in it for my sister that were just absolutely terrifying. So the first moment is I'm not going to worry about spoilers because E.T. is so old, but there's a moment at the very beginning of the movie when the main character kid goes outside into the backyard, and I think there's like a baseball or something on the ground in the yard, and he picks up the baseball and he throws it into the shed, and then E.T. is obviously in the shed. It doesn't show E.T., but he picks up the ball and chucks it back outside, and that scene like floored me as like because I was probably like 3 or 4 years old when I first saw the movie, because people didn't care so much about scary stuff back then for little kids. You know, it's just a little bit less restrictive, at least in my household. So that scene horrified me like to my core. So much so that if I see that scene today, I just looked it up on YouTube before this episode started, and it still scares me, and I don't know why. You think as an adult I'd be able to like see the logic behind it, but it was too much. And then the second scene is when E.T. at the end of the movie, or near the end, gets sick, and then all those government guys come in. They're like biohazard suits, and they're create all these like white tunnels around the house and stuff, and just like start like almost dissecting E.T. It's really scary as a little kid, and I even though I don't think any aspect of the movie is meant to be scary, but those two scenes just shake me to my core, and I don't know why. I have no idea.
Remember earlier we talked about how sounds can bring back a memory.
Right.
The sound of E.T. screaming in terror as they're like taking him away. That sound, I can hear it in my head right now, and it gives me like just the chills run down my spine, because by this point you're already kind of in E.T.'s camp, right? You're rooting for him, you're cheering for him, you're like, yeehaw, let's go, and you know, and E.T.'s screaming, and Drew Barrymore's screaming, and everybody's screaming, and I'm just like, oh, it's bad news.
Yeah,
it hurts me right where I live.
So, other than that, the next movie is also not really a horror movie. It's called Fire in the Sky. It's a Canadian-made movie based. Now, take this with a grain of salt. "Quote unquote" based on a true story of some guy who got abducted by aliens. So, in the apparent truth of the situation, in the apparent story, he and like 3 friends were like working late, and then as they were like carpooling home, and they saw this light in the sky, and it was really bright and nearby, so they like followed it into the woods, and then they realized it was pulsing with like extreme heat, and they were like, what the heck is this? Because it didn't crash down to the ground. It was like hovering just above like the tree line, and they were like, what the heck is this thing? And then the main guy got out of the car, and they're like, dude, get back in the car! And he was like, but look at this, what is that thing? And then sure enough, he gets abducted. And then just the way the movie plays out, he appears back on Earth like 2 weeks later, and he can't remember anything, and he's like naked in the middle of nowhere. And then over the course of the next 2 months in the movie, he like regains his memories, and then it tells the story of like him on the alien vessel. And there's this one scene on the vessel where he's like laying on his back on basically an operation table, while like 3 or 4 aliens like probe him and like prod him and all these different things. And there's one scene where, or one point in the scene where they like take this needle and like slowly move it into his eyeball, and I'm pretty sure because of that one scene, I am now horrified of anything touching my eye. Like the idea of eye surgery, the idea of contact lens. I can touch my own eye with my finger, but if anything like external is going to touch my eye, I get really freaked out about it, and I'm pretty sure it's entirely because of that one scene. And I saw that when I was like 5 or 6 years old, and it horrified me. Like I was screwed up for a couple weeks after that movie.
That's funny. I have a similar experience with the movie The Island, when Ewan McGregor's character is peeing those little nanobots out into the into the urinal, and you can see the look of like tension and pain on his face as he's trying to push them out. It just makes me think of like passing kidney stones or something.
Okay.
Sorry.
You know, a little tidbit. That's one of my favorite movies.
No, it is a great movie, no doubt.
Okay, so now we're going to get into actual horror movies that I've seen. I'm going to refer to just colloquially the Scream franchise and the I Know What You Did Last Summer franchise. Both of them came around about the same time and like shared equal popularity as well. And I was just a tad young for them. I remember when the first Scream movie came out, my sister and her friends had a slumber party and watched it, and you could hear them screaming constantly while the movie was going. And I was like, man, I want to watch it, but my parents wouldn't let me watch it. And I was like, man, I want to watch it. And then, because we had rented the movie, one day nobody was home, and I sat down and I put the movie in, and it wasn't scary at all. And I thought it was just really goofy, because the Scream mask, that iconic mask, has never scared me. It looks really stupid to me. It looks like a bad Halloween costume to me. So watching the movie, which is supposed to be scary, I wasn't scared at all. In fact, as a kid younger than my sister, I just thought it was just super cheesy. And I was like, why was she and her friend screaming at this? And I never really watched. I watched a bit of I Know What You Did Last Summer, and I Still Know What You Did Last Summer. But those two were like the classic teen hits in the 90s, and I at least for Scream, I never found it scary. And so, like, as far as horror of the 90s go, I didn't get it.
Yeah.
Do you have any movies from the 90s that were scary
Well, I think it was the 90s. I could maybe be corrected. It might be like turn of the century. But there was a movie called What Lies Beneath. And I never saw the whole movie. I didn't see like the beginning of the movie and any of the tension lead up or anything. I went and visited somebody's house, and there was a whole slew of girls having some sort of a sleepover or something downstairs. And me and a couple of friends, we come running down the stairs to bust their fun, and we ended up sitting down there and watching, the last like 15 minutes or so of What Lies Beneath. And we see at one point this psychopath ex-boyfriend or something, whatever his role is. I'm not really sure exactly, but he's the big evil of the movie anyways. And this one woman ends up like braining him with a telephone, one of the big clunky telephones that she keeps in the hall closet, or in the hallway, sorry. Not in the hall closet. And he ends up like flopping down like a dead fish, and there's like blood coming from the side of his head, and you're like, and the camera pans to like his face, but his face only takes up 1/3 of the screen. The 2/3 of the screen is like shows her like fleeing out the front door, and his face is looking at the camera, of course, and the whole time you're looking at his face, and you're like, his eyes are closed, right? He's just been knocked out cold. And you're like, oh my God, he's going to wake up. He's going to wake up. He's going to wake up. And then, of course, as tropey as can be, his eyes snap open. And as soon as he does that, like all the girls in there just exploded in screams. And that was probably the only experience I have with a horror movie that isn't one that's like damaging to my psyche, because I just sat there and laughed the whole time instead of being one of the ones that was scared, because I didn't get to experience the whole tension build up from the beginning of the movie. It was just hilarious for me.
Right. Yeah, Scream sort of had the same effect on me, although I did not watch it with my sister and her friends, just by myself when nobody was home. So there you go. So the next movie. What's that?
You did it the safe way.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah. The next movie is an actual scary movie. It's the movie I would say is the scariest movie I've ever watched in my life. It's a very popular movie. Daniel, can you guess what it is?
The Ring.
Bingo.
Ah, yes.
I, to this day, cannot watch that movie because it scares me too much. And I remember watching it for the first time, I want to say when I was like 13 or 14. And
Yeah.
it was just too much. It just... What's really interesting with The Ring compared to something like Scream is The Ring has a lot of story behind it. Like, it builds a lot of story throughout the movie.
Yes.
And then wraps up at the end with a whole bunch of horrifying things, like one right after the other. So it's definitely, it's the kind of thing that I watched the movie because my dad rented it, and he was like, "Jeff, do you want to watch The Ring?" And I was like, "I don't know, Dad. It's a scary movie." And then he convinced me.
Like, "I'll protect you, son."
No, he would never offer that. So we sat down and watched it, and I acted tough watching it, but I was the kind of kid that never jumped, like at jump scares, never made me jump. The Ring made me jump constantly throughout it, and I was trying to act tough at the end. My dad was like, "That was a pretty scary movie," and I was like, "Yeah, it was pretty scary." I couldn't sleep for like 3 weeks, I would say. Like
It's funny that you mentioned jump scares, because for myself, The Ring is also one of the most horrifying things I've ever seen in my life. But it wasn't for the jump scares; it was for the slow terror. It was like,
oh yeah, absolutely,
this thing that you're not expecting, or that you're totally expecting, and then it happens. But it's not like in your face, like bah, like you're supposed to jump and then haha, it's over. No, it was like that time when they put the video cassette in, and then she's like. She's in the TV, and then she just crawls out of the TV, and there's like water pouring out of the TV, and oh my gosh, and she's chasing you down as you're fleeing in terror.
But she's still like, even when she crawls out of the TV, she's still like a TV person apparition thing. So she blinks and like transports, and you're like, so
there's literal chills running up and down my spine as we speak, and my palms are getting all sweaty, and this is just
yeah.
This is not good for me.
Yeah, no, it was such a well done movie. Even though it was a remake of a Japanese version, it was just really well done, and it succeeds. It's like the greatest horror movie of all time for me. Like where The Shining is my dad's, or no, actually for my dad, Poltergeist is his quintessential horror movie. For me, it's The Ring.
And it's interesting to note that real fans of like horror genre, they say that The Ring really wasn't that great. But it sure did it for me, I tell you.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And just to prevent this episode from going forever long, I'm just going to move on really quickly. The last movie in my list that I like thought of like throughout the day while I was working was The Grudge. And The Grudge was similar to The Ring, where I believe it was like a Japanese movie first, and then they remade it. But just like The Ring, it felt like it had a really good budget and really good like atmosphere build up, and that stupid little Asian kid zombie ghost thing was like horrifying to me. There's a scene where he like, you know the way that the girl crawls out of the TV? There's a scene in The Grudge where the kid's doing that up the stairs, and it just... I just got a huge rush of shivers thinking of it. Oh my gosh, it's so creepy.
I didn't actually see The Grudge, so I can't add anything to that conversation.
It's so creepy.
I remember the commercials for it, and I remember thinking, that is a freaky movie that I will never watch.
There's a scene where she's like going down an elevator, and the kid keeps appearing at like every floor in the elevator. I think that's really famous from the trailers for the movie. There's a scene where she is like in her office building, and the lights are flashing, and she's like, "What the heck?" And so as she walks down the hall to like figure out what's going on with the lights, this kid keeps appearing all around her while she's walking, just in ways that she just doesn't see the kid, and you're like, ooh, every time it happens. I would say it had a less of an effect as The Ring to me, but it was still like really, really atmospheric and tense, and it didn't give me, it kept me awake probably for like a week, but it didn't give me like horrifying nightmares like The Ring did. Like like in The Ring when the girl got to the person, I think it only happens like twice or three times in the movie, but when the girl kills the person, then they become like grotesque looking as well.
Well, doesn't she like snap their neck or something?
Sure, but I don't know. But their face is like permanently horrified in their death state. But anyway, so yeah, it's just the Grudge and the Ring for me are like the big scares. But then after the Grudge, it was like you got a whole bunch of like bad rip-off movies that were like not based on the Ring and the Grudge, but like just rip-offs that people like trying to make clones essentially.
Well, I remember Paranormal Activity. I didn't see all of them. I only saw the one, and I think I saw it in theaters. So I don't know if it's 4 or 5, 3. I don't know. But in that one, at least the big bad, the scary character, was very, very much like the Ring, the teenage girl from the Ring. She was this creepy thing that kind of went zooming through the house way faster than she had any right to, and had kind of dark hair hanging down over her face, and the entire time she was just trying to take the baby, I guess, but she ends up killing like the dad, the mom, but like 3/4, I'd say probably even 7/8 or 9/10, if I'm going to go so far, if I may be so bold, of the movie is just nothing. It's just nonsense. The entire movie is shot like from security cameras inside the home, and like you keep expecting when you like, you know how when there's a jump scare coming and you're expecting it and you're like, the tension is high, but you're just like, it's coming, and then bam, it happens, and you're like, oh my gosh, that was crazy. But when it doesn't happen, and your tension just escalates and escalates and escalates till you get to the point where you're like, it's not going to happen, where you no longer believe it's going to happen, and then bam, that's when Paranormal Activity gets you.
It subverts your expectation.
Exactly. So this one part, like, they show this camera in the kitchen like probably 15 times previous to the jump scare in the movie, and you know, whether there's somebody in the kitchen or nobody in the kitchen, you know, it's just benign activity. If there's anything in the kitchen, it's just nothing is happening. Like the mom is preparing dinner or something like that, or you know, some kids making a snack or what have you, or it'll cut out to the pool, and then you know, there's just a nonsense scene in the pool, and then you come back to the kitchen, and just more of nothing keeps happening over and over and over again. And then probably a full hour into the movie, finally, just in an instant, I don't know how they shot this scene, but like in a instant, like mere hundredths of a second, every single cupboard door and drawer just slams open, and just instantly bang, and that's the jump. Nothing really scary happens on the screen, but that jump, that tension that they've been building and building and building and building for, you know, an hour, it just fully you're all keyed up. And so it's one of the scary things that I remember, even though it's not that scary. That jump scare still got me.
Right.
Yeah. So Paranormal Activity wasn't that great.
But then after that movie, it was Saw. Like,
oh yeah.
What other big movies were there?
To this brutal kind of horror where it was like, you know,
it was gore. It wasn't horror.
I know Texas Chainsaw Massacre kind of predated it, but it's in that vein of stuff where it's just dismemberment and, you know, people getting slaughtered, and it's not. I think what's really scary for me is the paranormal stuff. Do you know what I mean? It's not. Right. It's not the serial killer.
No, definitely not.
It's the weird.
Yeah. I would definitely agree with that. That's why Scream and I Know What You Did Last Summer didn't scare me, because it wasn't, as far as I remember at least, it wasn't supernatural. It was just some dude.
Yeah.
Definitely. I mean, we'll get to the next bit right now. Why not?
Well, I have one more movie.
Okay, go for it. Yeah.
Stick in there first. The last movie that probably rivals The Ring for me in creepiness was The Exorcism of Emily Rose. Now, we talk about the paranormal stuff and the stuff that just kind of gives you the willies and gets under your skin. This movie is all about like exorcising demons from this teenage child, and I watched the movie in its entirety from start to finish, and I remember very little of it. And I wasn't a child. I was I was probably 20, early 20s, 1920, something like that. And I saw the whole movie, and I remember very little of it. I remember her like being levitated and like just screaming out in agony and pain, and then all of a sudden there's like another voice talking out of her body, and it's just gives me the willies just talking about it. But I don't remember very much about the story, the premise. But what gets me, the reason why it's so scary for me, is that it's based on a true story. Now, right. I know that there's a lot of creative liberties that are taken when they, take a first-hand account and then put it into film. But just the simple knowledge that at least some of what I'm seeing was true, like actually happened.
Right.
It just, oh my gosh, it scares the hell out of me. No pun intended.
Shit. I'm not sure if I watched the Amityville one, but I'm not sure if I ever, and I don't know if I ever saw the original Exorcist. But
no, I haven't either. But that's another really popular one that people talk about.
Yeah. So moving on, after The Grudge, for me, I never watched Paranormal Activity. I never watched the Saw movies. I saw the first Saw movie and I thought it was so stupid, and I was just like, okay, horror has lost its touch. And so I moved on to YouTube because, just full disclosure here is, I like horror in the sense that I like the jump scare and the tension it builds in me. I get all giddy when I'm getting scared. I like that feeling. But then, of course, if it's really well done horror, it sticks with me, and I hate my life for a month.
So walk down the dark hallway.
That's right. But I enjoy the initial impact of it. So when horror movies sort of dried out for me, I was like, well, where can I go next? And so naturally I went to YouTube. And when I went to YouTube, I just all I did was look for like paranormal phenomena, like ghost stories, alien stories, the SCP Chronicle stuff. I forget what SCP stands for, Daniel, but it's been made into a game, but it's also like it's a series of fictional like government documents that like document both witness accounts and hands-on activity with like weird supernatural like beasts and monsters and stuff.
Right.
And some of it is super cheesy that you're like, man, I know this is fake, but it's so cheesy that even my immersion is broken. But right. In other cases, it's like really well done and well written, and you're like, oh my gosh, imagine if this thing was real. And there are actually people who make YouTube channels of them. They get a night vision camera and they go, because of course, I'm not sure about Canada so much, but especially in the United States, there's a lot of ghost towns. So there's a lot of places you can go that are just abandoned structures, and you can pretend that it's haunted or something. So people would do this with night vision cameras. They'd go into like an abandoned structure of some sort, and then say that they were like chasing an SCP monster of some sort, or they were ghost hunting, or they were like alien documentary or whatever. And I really latched onto all of these. And in fact, we were talking about the how like monsters scare us more than human antagonists scare us, right? Mm-hmm. I actually just watched a video this week. It was a bunch of abandoned building investigations gone wrong, where people go into a building. Usually they're not by themselves. They're with like at least one other person. They're looking around. They're not even trying to be quiet because they just assume they're by themselves in this building, and then it becomes absolutely obvious that there's a third person somewhere else in the building, mm-hmm. and it's completely accidental. And they're like, and then it becomes super scary because it's like midnight when they come to, because a lot of these ghost towns and stuff are are taped off. Like they're not just abandoned, but they're also prohibited access. So
right.
they go in at midnight so as to not get caught, and then they discover that there's a third person in there, and they're like, and it actually becomes super scary. You become scared for them because you're like,
Right.
oh my gosh, like even though it could just be another investigator in the building, you might also think to yourself, it could be an axe murderer or something, right? So yeah, some of those were terrifying to watch. I'm not gonna lie, but another thing I also looked at on YouTube when I first switched over was Slenderman. Slenderman, actually I'm going to look up really quickly here. There's multiple channels that do the Slenderman thing. Marble Hornets is the most popular. There's Everyman Hybrid, there's To the Ark, there's ML Anderson. There's all these different channels. Marble Hornets is by far the most popular. And Marble Hornets did its own thing, and all the other ones sort of did collaborations with each other. So you could say that theirs is a shared universe of the Slenderman story, while Marble Hornets is a separate story. But they're all like the Marble Hornets is really well done, and it's super scary. There's probably like, I would say 90-ish episodes in. No, maybe it's 60. No, I think it's around 90. There's around 90 episodes of Marble Hornets, and I would say 30% of them, nothing happens. It's just like, it builds up tension because you're like, is Slenderman going to appear? Is Slenderman going to appear? And I got so super attached to Marble Hornets that I ended up branching off and watching all these other different branches or channels as well. And I got super attached to the Slenderman mythos, and I thought it was really cool. But it also put my overactive imagination into overdrive. And now, to this, I haven't watched Slenderman videos since like 2016, I want to say. And to this day, if I see anything that's black with a white top, in like my peripheral vision, I automatically think to myself Slenderman. I don't think it's real. It's just that my peripheral vision, it reminds me of Slenderman, and I get like a very quick shiver down my spine because it's very scary. But unlike The Ring, unlike The Grudge, if I go back and I watch these old Marble Hornet Slenderman videos, it's not nearly as scary. It's still slightly scary, but I remember it being super intense when I watched it, and it has a completely different effect on me now.
So would you recommend the Slenderman series from the Marble guys? Marble Hornet?
Oh, absolutely. One really major benefit of it is that the episodes are really short. So like anywhere between, I would say, 3 minutes and 20 minutes. Like super, like I would say the average is probably about 8 minutes per episode. And a lot of it, another thing about it actually is it's a very complex story. So if you really want to keep up with what's going on, you have to pay attention to all the characters, when they disappear, when they don't disappear, why they disappear, because sometimes they just disappear because they go off and like live the rest of their life. But sometimes they become like part of the bad guy team because Slenderman sort of enslaves people. It's a crazy story, and it is very, very good. It's just really creative, just because it's an indie team just having fun on YouTube essentially. So yeah. So that was sort of my my foray into horror on YouTube, is that aren't games, obviously, because I did watch Markiplier when he first started up his channel. But as far as just like videos and stuff on YouTube, it was mostly paranormal stuff and Slenderman, which is also, Slenderman is like an ARG. Do you know what an ARG is?
Do not. You'll have to inform me.
An ARG is an alternate reality game, where what happens is it can be a video or a game that introduces something that has some sort of application in real life, that if you can pursue it, where it's like it'll like a game will list coordinates, and you're like, well, you'll instantly recognize them as coordinates. You look them up online, and you're like, oh, that's this location, and that location happens to have some sort of connection to the game. And then you can use that as a code later on in the game to find out other real life like implications and stuff. And you can, it's the type of thing that creates a huge rabbit hole you can fall down. And that's sort of what Slenderman is like, where audience reactions to each episode sort of shaped how the show became, without the audience realizing it at first. So it was like, it was very clever, at the very least.
I just had a creepy thought for a game, for like a horror game, where like the final confrontation with your last whatever, the big bad, it gives you said coordinates, and you click on it, and it brings you to like a feed of where, not a live feed, but like I don't know, like a Google Images or Google Maps or whatever, of where you're sitting, like your location. Be like the thing is right here, and then find, I don't know, no real way to make something happen in real life around the person, but if they get cut to that feed, it'd be like, oh, it's right here. Like they actually get that sensation, and then any sound they hear in their house at that moment will be like confirmation for them. Do you know what I mean? Like that. What happened right before we started recording this was that there was some sort of a sound happening at my back door in real life, and I was like, oh my gosh, what is happening? Because we're just sitting down to record this horror show, and I got kind of freaked out. I'm like, Jeff, hold the phone, and I had to go running off to check and see what this thing was. But I would have never been concerned about, a sound just coming from that direction. I've been like, well, whatever, I live in town, sounds are happening all around me. You know what I mean? But if you kind of try to work that in organically into this game, I just thought it'd be a neat idea.
It's happened before, and we'll get into it.
Oh no! Ah!
Have you watched any kind of horror, anything on YouTube before?
No.
Not that I know you don't actively pursue horror, but still, just had to ask. And now, before we get into the games we played this week and that kind of thing, I just wanted to go over the games I've played overall in the past. And I haven't played that many horror games, so it's a sort of a short list, but it will cover what Daniel was sort of premising there. The first horror game that I seem to recall ever playing, which seems weird to me. No, that's not the first. Okay, the first horror game I ever played was Darkseid. I've mentioned Darkseid before. It's a point-and-click adventure. It's super creepy. It uses art by H.R. Geiger, which is super creepy, and it's this weird alien world. And if you manage to play the game correctly, and get to the end game stuff where you actually go through the mirror into the alien world, it gets creepier, like compound creepier. Like it just exponentially gets worse as you get further into the game, and it's really, it's not scary in the sense of I'm terrified, like The Ring. It's like, it's super unsettling. It's just really creepy. You're just like, you're just offset by it. And so it never gave me nightmares or anything like that. In fact, it was very fascinating to me. But I think the first game that really scared me was Amnesia. I own the game, and I didn't actually own it until 2017, which sort of shocked me. But I remember playing it when it first came out, and I don't know how I played it when it first came out. But in the vein of Amnesia, I got to the water area where the monster is invisible and it's splashing around in the water, and that's like the cutoff line for a lot of different people in the world, because it's really unsettling to have this monster that you can't fight against, you cannot see, that gets attracted to noise. So the second you step in the water, it's like, "Hurr!" And you're like, oh my gosh! And you have to run away, but the water slows you down, and all this kind of stuff. And you have to use like rocks and stuff to like throw them in the water to distract the monster and stuff like that. And it's such a tense sequence that you're like, I think it only happens maybe twice in the game. but I'm leaning towards once in the game. It's like a one-off horror thing, but it was super effective on me, and it caused me to quit the game. And I never came back until like years later. I watched Jesse Cox play the game, and when he first turned on the game, I was like, okay, I'll play at the same time as him. And I got to the water part again, and again quit, because I was like, I don't like the idea of having an enemy I can't fight in any regard. And so it was scary, but it was also boring to me that I couldn't do anything. It takes that power away from you, and it wasn't scary, it was annoying. I guess
it's funny because Jesse Cox is well known for having a deep fear of water games and things that can get at him from underwater. And I wonder, I don't know, I have no idea how long ago he produced this video, but I wonder if that has something to do with that fear. And I'm curious to know if he actually pushed through it.
Okay, so with his playthrough, there's these 3 ladies that he's friends with that they used to always do collaborative, like cooperative games. And so when he played Amnesia, those 3 ladies like just commentated alongside of him and like made fun of him, and they all knew the game and he didn't, so they were just like egging him to keep going. And he reached a point where like his experience throughout Amnesia was he got more and more scared, more and more scared. He peaked, and then he realized there's nothing I can do, and almost all of the monsters in the game are the same monster. So he got bored of the monster, and it no longer scared him. So it was more of an annoying obstacle each time a monster appeared when he got like halfway through the game. So that's sort of the downfall of Amnesia, is if you get caught by the monster too many times, it ceases to be scary.
Right.
So I also played Slender, which this isn't the full version of the game. This was like a demo that was free online. Anyone could play it. It was just gathered the pages. It was like the 7 pages or the 9 pages or whatever, and hope you don't get caught by Slenderman. And Slenderman in that version of Slender, the game, was just an inanimate object that would appear, make your screen fuzzy, and it was really low budget, and I just it didn't sell for me. It sort of employed the same sort of noises and stuff that like the Marble Hornets version of Slenderman did, so it sort of had a nostalgia factor there, and it was kind of creepy at first, but as soon as you realize it's a stationary Slenderman, it's not going to get any closer to you. It's just a matter of either waiting him out or just hoping that you won't run into him. It's like just like with Amnesia, it's like an annoyance thing where you're like, well, I can't die unless I walk into him, basically, and he doesn't move around, so all I have to do is, if I run into him, turn around and run away until his sprite like despawns and then respawns somewhere else. So it was just disappointing. Not that I expected a lot out of it, because it was like a low budget game. Another game is Until Dawn. Have you heard of that one?
I think I think I've heard of it, but I'm not too. You probably just heard the title.
Okay, this game is a very. It doesn't make fun of. I'd say it's more of a tribute to horror movies from the 80s and 90s, where and it's not like a shot-for-shot remake of these movies, but it plays into a lot of the cliches that you grow to expect from older horror movies, with like slasher flicks and stuff like that.
Right.
And you know how like the butterfly effect really plays into the game a lot, and it's basically like, I think it's like 8 teens go to a mountainside resort, and it's not a resort, it's like one of the teenagers is a rich kid and his family owns the whole mountain and this mansion on the mountain, so they all go to the mansion to party, and then 2 of the girls die, and then they come back a year later to sort of celebrate the sisters, and then more horrible things happen, and it turns out, they died because of this one thing that's sort of connected to the second thing that's killing all the rest of the teenagers a year later, and it builds and builds and builds and builds, and it's the story's really good. The immersion's awesome. I never actually played the game, but I watched like 7 different Let's Plays of it, because it was the kind of game that, because it had the nuance of the supposed butterfly effect, it felt like every single decision you made in the game affected change. So basically it meant no matter who you watched play the game, each of them had a minor difference in their experience. So that was just an awesome game. Another game is the Doki Doki Literature Club. Have you ever heard of that one?
I think I've heard you talk about that one.
Really?
Yeah, I think so. Because
Okay.
I remember thinking like you're crazy into like anime stuff, and I was like, that definitely sounds like an anime thing. I just pulled it up. I just pulled it up on Google, and it does not look like a horror movie or game.
Well, it's definitely not a horror movie, but it's definitely a horror game.
Really?
So this game, I mentioned subverting expectations. That's exactly what this game is. Every step of the way. It starts off like a visual novel would. You have your 4 key characters, and all of their stupid little quirks, and they're all cutesy. And as you go through the game, like if you go to the images on Google and just scroll down, you'll see some crazy images that are kind of unsettling to look at. That's what happens in the game, just constantly, and it's kind of crazy because it sort of plays like an actual visual novel does, which most visual novels are like romantic like, and well, not most, I shouldn't say that, but a lot of them are very romance based. And so usually when it's one male character who's the protagonist and a bunch of female characters, you have like romance options with each of the girls.
Right.
And that's sort of how this plays out until you get to a certain point, and then one of the girls, you find out, oh, she hurts herself. That's really dark for this game that was happy-go-lucky up until now. And then later on, it gets even worse with that character, and you're like, that is weird. And then the one character is like your childhood friend, and you're like, oh, cool, awesome, I've known her my whole life, she's always so happy, and then you find her like she hangs herself, and you're like, what the hell is this game trying to tell me? Like, it's like really, it's not even, at first it's really scary. At first it's really creepy, and then it like jumps the line into scary, because then you're like, what's going to happen next? And the part that I'm talking about, where the your proposed boss would like pinpoint your location. In this game, at some point, one of the characters is sort of, it's the character who's like manipulating everything. At the beginning of the game, you can call yourself whatever you want. Okay, you can call yourself nincompoop. At some point in the game, she'll stop and she'll call you by your actual name. And I don't know how the game does that, but it does it. And you're like, when that happens, you're like, oh, what the heck is happening? Like, it's sort of, it blows you away, and you're like, oh my gosh. And it's awesome watching that on YouTube as well. Is it totally, everything up until that, it's like happy-go-lucky. That's the first section, and then the next section is kind of creepy. All the characters have these creepy quirks about them that you find out about them, even though you've been friends with most of them like your whole life, because you grow up with them throughout school and stuff. And then the next stage is scary, and then there's another stage of like shock factor, where things keep going horribly different. Like, one of the girls loses her memory at some point in the game of like the previous day. So the previous day, a girl dies, and you're like, and like dies in the classroom. And so this other girl walks in, she's horrified. The next day, she can't remember anything, and you're like, why can't she remember anything? because it was like a bloody death, and you're like, what the hell? Like, everything in the game is so crazy. And I know I'm kind of spoiling things talking about this.
You're really selling this. You're making me want to go and download it.
Yeah, and I wouldn't classify it specifically as scary, but it's definitely super creepy. Super duper creepy. And it definitely deals with a lot of dark themes, obviously, with suicide and self-harm and stuff like that. But it's in my opinion, these horrible things are just for the shock factor. They're not actually trying to deliver like a meaningful message.
Yeah. It's free on Steam, by the way.
Yeah. Yeah, so that one is definitely weird. I've never beaten it. I got pretty far through it, I'd say. And I all these things that I've said are sound spoilery, but I haven't even spoiled the big thing that happens. Like the name drop is like, what? But the big thing that happens is like absurd levels higher than that. It's a really cool game.
Oh, I hate these games, but you're selling it so well.
So that about wraps it up for my. Oh, and then there's Five Nights at Freddy's, but we'll cover that. In the next sector.
That's the next sector, in Sector 5.
Sector 7G.
Yeah. This is where I take things over. So, I had never, ever played a Five Nights at Freddy's game before. And after this, I'm not sure that I ever will. But don't let that discourage any of our listeners from giving this game a try, or any of the Five Nights at Freddy's games, because I'll be completely honest, the only reason I'm not super into this is because I'm not super into this. I mean, this kind. I thought that this game was supremely well made, quite creepy, and I enjoyed the hell out of it, but not more than some of the other styles that I like to play. So I don't know that I'll ever pursue this again. But this game, this Five Nights at not Five Nights. It's called Freddy's Pizzeria Simulator, right? I think
Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria Simulator.
Freddy Fazbear's, thank you. Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria Simulator. So
it's the 6th game in the franchise,
but doesn't belong in any chronological order, right? It doesn't like continue a story or something.
It most certainly does.
Does it really? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I might have to look at the other ones then, because so much of this game doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense, and I imagine there's probably, maybe you could shed some light on some of the questions as I get to them.
I most definitely can.
Okay, good. That sounds good. Is that why you dropped this game to me? Because you knew that I would be all like disconcerted from being dropped in the middle of a story?
No. I honestly, I think it's just a really, really creative take on a video game. It's completely different from its predecessors.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was. I can't speak to the other ones, but this was quite unique, anyways. So the game begins with this kind of 16-bit, like very Pong-esque kind of opening minigame where you're this little Freddy Fazbear, I guess, and you're picking up these pizzas on the counter and you're slinging them at kids, and you throw 3 pizzas to a kid and the kid disappears and gives you 100 points, and this sound bite plays that, the doo-doo-doo kind of, hey, you did something good, kind of, here's this mental reward or something. And so you know that you're supposed to feed the kids pizzas, and so you run along the line and you throw them all a bunch of pizzas, and hey, you've passed the level. The next level shows up, and then all of a sudden you've got an obstacle in your way. There's 3 kids, but then there's like a gray version of yourself, almost like a shadow Fazbear that's kind of trying to intercept the pizzas as you're throwing them. So you learn that you got to throw a pizza at him and kind of immobilize him, and then you can kind of get down beside him and throw more pizzas at the kids, and doesn't take much skill to pass that level. And then as soon as you pass that level, the game just kind of glitches out and you're like, what the heck? I honestly actually felt like there was something wrong in the game files, because my mouse stopped working properly, and all of like all the kids just started like giving me 100 points like 10 times a second. So there's just this 100 points was just scrolling up at the screen, and this bear kind of multiplied like 12,000 times, like the shadow bear multiplied like 12,000 times. And I was like, okay, I'm going to have to start this game over. The download was broken. I'm going to have to download it again. And then all of a sudden the screen just goes black. And then it's like, okay, what just happens? And before long, you end up in front of this kind of it's a robot that has clearly seen better days.
Yeah, you're at a desk and you're separated by the robot.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, interesting tidbit. This desk that you're at, it's not really a desk. It's more like a dining room table almost. And the reason I say it's a dining room table is because the dining room table I am sitting at as we speak looks exactly like that one. And so it's just like an extra level of immersion for me. It was like, because the dining room table I'm sitting at, I made myself out of like pine wood that has like locally sourced pine wood. And it's very like, even down to the color of the stain I chose. The only difference is mine has a top coat, a shiny top coat that isn't on that table. But like the wood graining is so well done that it looks very similar to like the knots and stuff like that I specifically hand chose for my tabletop. And it was just like, my gosh, this is an extra level of creepy. Right. But anyways, yeah, so sitting across from you in almost like this interrogation style is this poorly lit robot that, like I said, has clearly seen better days. It's all beat up and parts of it are falling off, and it's got like covers and panels that are dented and showing the parts underneath. And it's just like, you're like, this wouldn't be creepy if it weren't for the lighting. The lighting kind of, the light is shining from right above it, so it casts like these kind of creepy shadows on the face and body of this robot. But you're like, by and large, there's nothing super freaky about it, I'll be honest. And there's like a voice instructing you on how to play the game, but then it just goes ahead, it tells you what you can do to the robot, but it doesn't tell you why. It doesn't tell you, like, it gives you no pertinent instructions. You've got a clipboard in front of you with like a sheet of paper that says, with checkboxes, and the checkboxes, again, with no instruction. The checkboxes say yes, no, or unsure.
Right.
And you're like, what in actual heck is going on here? And before you know it, this machine starts like just blitzing sounds at you, and you're like, okay. And they're not like your regular beep boop computer sounds. They're like when you listen to, like, in the movies, you get like alien interference in the radio or something where it's like, I'm doing a terrible job of it. You know what I mean? It's like, it's just this this computer generated confusion kind of sound. Not quite so far as like your dial-up internet sound, but in that vein, you know what I mean? Maybe a little messier, maybe a little grungier than that, but that style of sound. And you're like, this thing is making a really weird sound. What the heck is going on? And the voice that's talking to you says like something to the effect of analyzing next sound clip in 3, 2, 1, and then it plays the sound clip. And you're supposed to do something with this clipboard in front of you after this sound clip. And it's like, what the actual heck am I supposed to do? Like, you can click whichever box you want, yes, no, or unsure. And then it gives you a few seconds to respond, and then it goes on to the next sound clip. And you've got 5 different layers, levels, kind of questions, sound bites to analyze, and 5 different series of checkboxes. And you get to the 4th one, and here's the first scare. It's like, the guy says, analyzing next soundbite in 3, and then he cuts off, and this robot in front of you in this really sweet little girly voice says 2, 1, and then her eyes like flick open at you, and that's it. That's all. But that's like the first kind of this tension's kind of tension has been building in front of like in me this whole time, and then her eyes like flick open and look right at me, and I'm like, just yeah. Again, talking about it gives me the willies. But that is just the first and most tame of the jump scares to come. So the entire premise. So before I continue, Jeff, what am I doing in that interrogation room? I know what I'm supposed to be doing as far as salvaging, but what the heck is the paper about?
The paper, I think, is just a way of blocking your vision from the robot.
So there's nothing story-based behind that?
Well, what you're supposed to do is indicate yes if it moves.
Oh, I thought it was yes if it was sounding aggressive, because the audio changes, right?
Right. No. I forget exactly how it works. It's like, I think an audio plays, and then you're supposed to like gauge a reaction. If it doesn't react, you click no. If it does react, you click yes. And if you're unsure, you click unsure.
So it's not the robot that's making the audio?
No, you're playing the audio at the robot.
Oh, that changes everything. See, that was never explained to me.
I thought it was explained. Otherwise, how would I know that?
I don't know.
But, did you ever shock the robot?
Yes.
Okay. Was there a reason why you shocked it?
Well, because it was getting scary as hell, and it had moved its head from like lying on its shoulder to upright, and it was like, zap. But then it continued to do it every single time I brought the clipboard back down. Its head was back up. I was like, no! So I ended up, that particular animatronic was worth $1,000, and I ended up like reducing its value pretty significantly. So yeah, I guess with no further light to shed on that, I'll just continue. So let me see my notes here. Yeah, so a couple jump scares in the first few minutes. After you get past that that initial weirdness, you get brought through this kind of very 1940s kind of post-World War II-esque animation series. It's like
an ad.
Yeah, like an ad, like a Popeye style cartoon ad that is trying to you remember those
we
old
want you for the army.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, you remember those old Abe Lincoln posters that said "We want you"? It's that style of
Abe Lincoln. That was Uncle Sam.
That's Abe Lincoln.
What?
Uncle Sam is Abe Lincoln.
No, it's not.
Okay, well, you might be right. I always thought it was Abe Lincoln. Either way, it was meant to convey that America wants you to join in the war. Anyways, it's that same style of ad where they're trying to get you to sign up for Freddy Fazbear's pizzeria franchise and become like a franchise owner and, you know, start a restaurant. And it's very much in the vein of like a tycoon game where you're supposed to build up this thing. But that's the mini game, you know. The tycoon. I guess that's probably the overarching story is you trying to build up this pizzeria. But the true nitty gritty is that you're just trying to survive for 7 days. If you can make it up to the end of 7 days, you win the game. You get different endings, I guess. I don't know. I never made it to the end of the 7 days. And you're like, okay, you have a pizzeria. What are you trying to survive from exactly? So you start your day, or rather you get to you passively get to closing time. You never actually get to see any of the characters, any of the NPC characters in your pizzeria. So you get to closing time, and that's the beginning of your play experience for that day is closing time. And you get into like this really creepy back room where you need to use your computer to order supplies and print posters and menus and stuff like that. And for some reason, you don't have to leave your your back room to like unclog toilets and do all the like your maintenance.
Yeah.
But either way, you're sitting behind this really seedy looking computer, and you have one of those like 1980s printers with, you know, the bifold paper, and the printer goes it's very loud, very annoying, and the computer has like dial-up sounds that it's just spitting out at you, and you've got this ventilation fan that's running really loud in the background. So all of this kind of gets explained to you. You get you get through your first day with no, like, your first, I guess, end of day process with no big hindrances. But I should explain kind of what's in the computer. I don't know. Were you hoping I would get like this nitty gritty with the game, this granular?
Yeah, keep going.
Yeah. Okay. I was like, am I going off the rails here? So you get in the computer.
It's really. I'm not sure if you realize this because you didn't play the game in order from the first to the sixth, obviously. But it's really interesting hearing somebody who's never ever played or watched somebody play the game.
Yeah. No, it's weird. So anyways, in the computer there's three separate functions to help you survive, because that's the big danger, is while you're sitting at the computer. That's when you're in that is the game. This is how you play the game. This is surviving the game.
Yeah, it's defenseless mode.
Yeah, everything else is mini games. This is the game of you sitting at the computer and surviving. So you have three different survival tools. You have a motion detector. You have sound, like you can play music in separate rooms.
Yeah, different quadrants. Yeah.
And what's the other one I'm missing? Oh geez, how come I can't remember it? Oh, ventilation. Like you can quiet your ventilation for whatever reason.
Whatever reason.
And your ventilation. No, I'll get to that. So, you know, in your first day, you don't really have to use any of those things because your pizzeria is empty. There's nobody in there, right? But after that first initial day, you get kind of shoved in front of another one of these broken down robots that apparently you found in the alley, and you bring it into your quote unquote interrogation room. Where you have to, like, again, do the same thing with almost no explanation for what or how or why you're marking on, not the how, but why you're marking on this clipboard.
It's funny because when you're describing it, you're like, it makes no sense. But as you're describing it, I'm like, yeah, that makes perfect sense.
But it's just like, okay, why would there be? Yeah, never mind. I'll
ask the questions later if you want. Yeah,
I guess so. And I don't know if it's possible to reach the end of this first real interrogation without waking the robot up. I don't know if it's possible because I went through it 3 separate times and failed every time.
The very first robot?
The very, very first robot.
What is the very first robot?
It's a bear, I think.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's definitely passable.
Is it?
Yeah.
Because I was not able to. So what happens is you have your taser, which you can, if your robot starts moving, you could like shock it back into dormancy, I guess. But every time I'd raise the clipboard back up, it had moved again. And you only have 3 charges on your taser, so you're trying to not use them up if you don't have to. So every additional level, like soundbite that you go to, you're taking a chance that the thing's not going to freak out and attack you. So I didn't use my taser. And then, sure enough, bah! You know, it jumped and attacked me. Oh, here's the funny thing. I rejected that first animatronic bear.
Okay.
And I still got attacked on day 2.
Okay.
So there should have been no animatronics in my pizzeria at all. And I still got attacked on day 2. So I was like, don't have to worry about making noise, don't have to worry about this thing or checking in my vents or checking my motion detector because there should be no animatronics in my pizzeria.
And I know why.
Probably because one of the decorations I bought had one in it or something.
Well, that's exactly it.
But yeah, I think I made it to day 3 or day 4 at the furthest, and I had like 4 different animatronics in my in my thing. So it was very difficult, if not impossible, to protect myself. You know, because they like to. I think I missed saying that they're attracted to sound. And your computer makes a butt ton of noise, and your printer makes a butt ton of noise, and your ventilation makes a butt ton of noise. So you have to like constantly monitor your motion detectors and turn your ventilation off as often as you can to reduce the noise you're making. And watch your motion detectors, watch the rest of your pizzeria. Try and play sounds in other quadrants, like music in other quadrants of your pizzeria to draw them away from you. And yeah, it was difficult. It was enjoyable right up until every time they they jump scared me, and I was just like, but it didn't. It wasn't so bad that it made me want to close the game and never pick it up again. You know what I mean? It wasn't the Ring levels of scary, because at the end of the day, what keeps jumping out to get you is just like a demented teddy bear. Like there's nothing. There's nothing super creepy about it. Sure, it looks kind of creepy and it's dismembered and kind of broken, and it very like lots of emphasis on scary eyes. For whatever reason, scary eyes is the theme. Big, dark, lots of eyes kind of half poking out or half popping out, and eyelids half closed, like those creepy dolls that close their eyes when you lay them down.
Do you want to know the best part of your whole experience?
What?
That's the part of the game where you're in the vent doing all those stupid menial tasks.
Yeah.
That's like a very nonsense part of the game.
Is it?
Yeah, it's not the focus point of the story. It's not the focus point of the mechanics. It's just like it's sort of slapped in there as the tension between the sequences.
So So the big part is when you're doing the salvage process.
No, that's half. The other half is the actual game of building your pizzeria.
Yeah, but there's nothing freaky about that, is there? Did I not get far enough? Maybe.
Oh, there's some freaky stuff there.
Is there?
Like what kind of things did you buy?
I bought I was trying to raise my health and safety, so I bought kind of like the first aid crash carts, and raise my income, my passive income. So I bought like the game consoles, like the arcade game consoles. I bought one like gumball machine, decorations, stages.
Oh, you bought the arcade consoles?
I bought one of them. Yeah.
Which one?
The dark one. It was like Space Invaders-esque kind of theme.
Okay, so there's several of the items that you buy reveal story bits.
Okay.
And they only reveal story bits when you demo play them.
Oh, I didn't even know you could demo play them.
Yeah, if you click on most of the games, you can demo the game, and then you actually earn money for demoing some of the games. And
no way.
Yeah. So there's one arcade where it's like a maze game where you have to race through the maze in a limited amount of time and pick up all the items in the maze. Then when you beat it, it unlocks level 2 of the maze. So then you go back in and you demo level 2 of the maze, and level 2 of the maze is a little bit wonky. There's some weird stuff going on in the maze. It's like it's glitching out sort of, and you're like, oh, what's going on? And then the third time you go through the game, there's like the music is messed up. There's blood like trailing behind your character as you're running around, and you're like, what the heck happened? And then when you beat the game, it shows your like the screen goes black, and it shows your character playing the game, and it shows your character has like a almost as if your character was like a little girl. She has like a sad face, and like standing over her behind her is one of the animatronics.
Ooh.
And that's a creepy part. And there's another game where it's like a racing game. You're like on a street at night. It's raining and you're driving along and you're supposed to obviously avoid other cars to get faster and faster and faster. And you can beat the game as many times as you want, but there's like a side road in the game that if you just move the car down to that side road, it'll load into another screen where you can get out of the car and walk around. And when you walk around, you'll discover different bits of story that are not really important to you personally because you don't know the previous story of the other games, but it's like a huge story reveal for people who have been following the story, for example. And this happens throughout a lot of the different things you can buy.
Okay. So the Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria Simulator is something that happens kind of on the periphery of the Five Nights at Freddy's franchise. Like it's kind of off to the side, but it still advances the story.
No, it is the main story.
It is. So your main character starts out like when you play the previous games. You're still the same main character.
No, you're a different character in every game.
Oh, okay.
The story is not based on the character that you're playing. It's based on the characters that you're playing against.
Oh, I see. So it's the 4 different weirdos and animatronics.
Well, the cast of animatronics increases as the games go on, and the point of the pizzeria. Do you want to know the point of the game?
Sure. I don't know that I'll ever play the game again. That's not to say that it's not very good. I mean, if you guys listening aren't sure if you like horror games and jump scares and stuff, this is a pretty safe way to test the waters. It's not that scary.
Yeah, it's pretty tame. Yeah,
it's pretty tame.
So
whenever the thing like screams in my face, I just smile now.
So, like you said, with the you rejected the robot and you still got attacked.
Yeah.
Anytime you get a risk factor when you buy an item, that risk factor is it's both the chance of your visitors getting hurt, but it's also a slight reveal that there's an animatronic loose suddenly in your building.
Right.
But the focus of the game is when you're doing that salvage thing, is to not reject any of the robots and also successfully salvage all of them. And the reason they're all, for some reason, showing up in the back alley is because they're all like attracted to. I can't remember if they're attracted to the location or to one of the animatronics in the location, but they're all coming from far and wide to the same location for one purpose. And the point of the story is to gather them all together in the building and then burn the building down, because your character's trying to end them forever.
Interesting.
And there's a reason why they're all like super damaged and stuff at the beginning when you're doing that interview/interrogation thing, because they were like they've gone through a huge mess of stuff already. So, like, obviously 5 games worth of being sort of,
beat up and destroyed and...
Yeah. Like, there's one character in the first game, his name is Foxy the Pirate. In the second game, he's like... The second game goes into the past, and he's like an incomplete animatronic, so he's not all there. So... As the game has progressed in various iterations, it's not just the 4 core robots now. It's like a cast of like 40 robots. So while the premise of Pizzeria Simulator is to pull them all together and burn them down, you're not pulling all of them together, because I don't think it's possible. I'm not sure if all the characters are in that game, but I don't think you can either collect them all either. In like one gameplay or play through the game. But yeah, okay. That's the point, and it makes sense because we all know that the animatronics are the villains of this game series. But it makes even more sense when you know all of the rest of the story. And again, I would recommend you either watch Markiplier's playthroughs or watch the game theorists do all. They have like 20 videos now of all their theories on the storyline. And the storyline, that one really interesting thing about Five Nights at Freddy's is the story is super duper complex. Like Scott Cawthon, like he knows what he's doing. He's written books and everything based on this story that he's created. And what's actually most interesting about him is he's a Christian.
Oh yeah?
Yeah.
Well, he does scary stuff quite well.
Yeah, he makes this creepy game, but he's a Christian. It's funny to me.
Well, yeah, no, that's interesting. Yeah, I don't really have too much else to report on. I kind of ignored my notes and just kind of blew through the entire game. Like I said, it was diverting. I enjoyed playing the game, and I encourage anybody that, you know, this sounds at all intriguing. If it piques your interests at all, I advise you to just log on to Steam. If you don't have a Steam account, they're super easy to create. Quickly create a Steam account, download the game for free, and give it a try. You can be playing in 10 minutes or less, and yeah, it's definitely worth a try. It's an experience.
If the game's too tense for you, like we said, Doki Doki Literature Club is also free, and that one is way slower. It's just a reading game. It's not. There's no action. There's no, like, you have to do something in this time frame kind of thing, right? So
right,
it's a little bit more relaxed.
Yeah.
So, while I also did play, I played a couple horror games this week in anticipation for today's episode. I actually spent more time on the analytical side. I tried to break apart horror games and why they're like so effective sometimes and a complete flop other times. And I'm not necessarily going to answer that today, but by Job, I'll try. So, two key examples here that ring true for me are Five Nights at Freddy's Sister Location, which I believe is the 5th game. Because that game, for me, is not scary at all. And if anything, it's more annoying than everything else. And then Dead Space 2 is the other side of this extreme. Every time I sit down and play it, I'm scared by it. So let's get the more boring part out of the way first. I mean, Sister Location, though it followed 4 incredibly successful games, Scott Cawthon, the creator, must have been like more concerned with story or something than scary, because the mechanics changed, the presentation changed, your role changes. Maybe it was too adventurous for Scott to branch out as far as he did with this title. I have no idea. I've only played this title once, but I watched a few videos to refresh myself on what was done wrong, and really it comes down to like the monsters. So if you look at all the animatronics in all the games, they're all these like giant, like 7-foot tall, like animatronic robots that are kind of creepy to look at, just like the animatronics that used to be at like Chuck E. Cheese and stuff. They were always creepy, like weird. Something was off about those animatronics. And it's the same with Five Nights at Freddy's. When you see them, you're like, well, I can see how it may have at one point in time been a fun, like happy-go-lucky looking creature, but it's kind of unsettling, especially the ones at Five Nights that are a bit decayed, at least in the Pizzeria Simulator. But in Sister Location, it goes a little bit further, and instead of making these life-sized animatronics that can like crunch your neck with a single squeeze of their fist, it introduces these little tiny animatronics that are like a couple inches tall. And I'm not sure if it's trying to play on the whole sense of like worms or bugs on you or whatever, but it doesn't work with me because that kind of thing doesn't gross me out. So there's a couple sequences where you have to like tighten screws. You've been trapped inside of an animatronic suit, and you have to tighten screws on the suit so that it doesn't clamp down and squish you and kill you. So you have to tighten these screws around the faceplate. But while you're doing that, there's these little tiny dudes that are crawling up the sides of the screen to like, and I think if they reach the top or something, they kill you. But it was just the most annoying experience ever, because you have to manipulate, like, I think it's either 6 or 12 screws on the faceplate, and they're constantly slowly unwinding, so you have to like get to each of them in turn and make sure that you're like giving them each the same amount of time and all that. And all the while there's these stupid annoying bug creatures that are going up the top of your mask, and it's just like, just describing it exhausts me, because it's like, it's annoying. And it's there's another sequence in the game where you're like crawling on the floor, and you have like a flash cube camera almost, where you can flash and you can see everything for a split second, and if you see the animatronic in your sight, you just move out of its path. But it's not scary because you can use the camera any amount of times, and though the animatronic does move around and stuff, it just, like, I've never been caught in that sequence, and I did that sequence several times because I was trying to like find secrets and stuff, and I never ever got caught there. And I was like, what's the point of that sequence? Like, it's like a huge waste of time. It's not even a puzzle. Like, there's nothing going for it. And I don't know what Scott Cawthon was thinking. I'm not sure. I looked up the game and I couldn't find anywhere that anyone found it was like a lame game. But it was weird. And then there's these intermission periods between the levels, or between the nights, I guess you could say, where your character goes home and watches this stupid, cheesy soap opera thing of a vampire and a wife, and the wife is a human, and there's all these different like cheesy jokes about their kid being like half vampire, and I don't get it. It's not funny. It's light and stupid, but it's I don't know what the target of this event is. And it happens every single night, where you're like, at the end of the night, you watch this show progress, and the show is kind of like a metaphor for the actual story of the game to some extent, but like, it's got a weird delivery, and I don't get it. And it's so like every aspect of the game isn't scary at all. It's a little bit suspenseful at the beginning, but once you realize like the mechanics, you're like, well, all right, I get it. I don't know. I don't want to sound like I'm hating on the game, because I think the whole franchise is phenomenal. But there's something about Sister Location that I'm like, I don't care. It's not scary. It's nothing. Yeah. So like, while other games like put heavy emphasis on atmosphere and suspense and monster mechanics, the game seemed to like ignore all of it. But on the opposite extreme, if we look at Dead Space 2 I played this week. All I did was I just loaded into my like most current game, which isn't my most current save file isn't close to beating the game, but it's like halfway through the game. And so I was just walking around killing monsters and trying to remember how to play the game, essentially, because I just wanted to get the re-experience. I didn't want to go through the tutorial and stuff of starting a new game. And yeah, it has, like, where I dropped into the game, it immediately had this like tense atmospheric music of like breathing and holding your breath, and breathing and holding your breath to like listen for sounds and stuff. So it had the atmosphere, it had the suspense. You have this weapon to defend yourself, and even though you have this weapon to defend yourself, the enemies are still petrifying. Like, there's these little tiny dudes that are, I think they're actually like zombified fetuses that like they like run across the floor. They don't look like fetuses, but that's what they were as humans. All the enemies in the game are humans that have been transformed into, they're called necromorphs. So this thing came, like, its original like human component was a fetus. So it's a little tiny monster creature, and it sort of reminds me of those flood balls from Halo.
Yes.
It doesn't pop as easily as those guys do, but it like squirms around like they do. And that it's a little enemy. It's easy to kill if you can like hit it, but even the smallest, weakest enemy in the game, which is this thing, it's still like it's intense to fight it because you're like, I don't want that thing on me. So as it's like trying to jump towards you, you're like, get away from me, kind of thing. And then there's an enemy in the game called a stalker, and these guys are like the raptors from Jurassic Park. They have like this elongated head with these long arms with like long fingers, and they're super lanky, and they intentionally hide behind objects. And if you're quiet and you're just looking around with the camera, not moving your character, you'll see them like poke their heads out from behind cover, either like sticking their head out horizontally from behind cover, but because they're really tall, sometimes they'll like stand on their tiptoes and like poke their head above the cover at you. And it is, because it's a horror game, the lighting is very, very well done. So when you see these creatures like peeking out at you, it is horrifying. Like that is by far the scariest creature I've ever faced in a horror game. Like it's just like they sort of like they click at each other as if they're communicating, like the raptors do in Jurassic Park. And then when they decide to attack you, instead of just like rampaging around the corner, they jump over the obstacle they're hiding behind like a raptor would, and you're like, ugh! And then suddenly you're like fumbling with your weapon to like aim at it and shoot it before it reaches you because they're really fast. And it's even though you have a weapon to defend yourself, you're still like super creeped out by all the monsters and scared of them in some cases. And it's just, you have an objective in the game. That's another thing, is like your experience with Pizzeria is you don't really know what you're doing other than progressing the days.
Right.
But in a game like Dead Space 2, it's just like any other RPG. You have an objective and you're advancing that objective, and then once you complete it, you have another objective that you're advancing. So it's you have a reason, you have a concrete reason to constantly push through the game. I was going to play Pizzeria. I started it up, but I never actually ended up playing it. But yeah, it's that one was fun too. I'm not gonna lie. I wanted to do a lot of analysis on why some games are a flop. Like if you think about jump scares, I feel like there's a bunch of young guys that I work with that are like really heavy into gaming. So some of them play like Apex, some of them play Dark Souls, some of them play Pokemon, but they all and every time we do an episode, I basically interview people at work, just get like different opinions, and they all unanimously agreed that jump scares are like cheap scares. So jump scares are they're so cheap. Everyone always seems to unanimously agree that jump scares are like the cheapest way to scare people because they're effective on like 95% of the population. In fact, there's a couple guys at work that it's just like a continuous, I don't know how it started. Oh, there's a lady at work that, despite being a giant, I can easily sneak up on her. And I don't mean to sneak up on her. I just walk up behind her and then I say her name. I'm like, hey Ruth, blah 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 blah. And as soon as I say hey Ruth, she jumps like a foot in the air and she's like, oh Jeff, you scared me. And it happens like every single day. And she always like hits me and she's like, stop trying to scare me. I'm like, I'm not trying to scare you. I'm walking up behind you. And it sort of became a game among all the staff to try to scare each other. And there's a couple native guys that work on the wash aisle, and they are like stoic pieces of stone that if you try to scare them, they're like, oh hey Jeff. They're like, what? I snuck up on you so well. How did that not work? I'm sure there's people like that in the world that when they watch a jump scary thing, they don't get jump scared. Right. But I would say that's the vast minority of the population. I would say these games and these movies that employ jump scares as like their only meaningful way of scaring people is kind of lazy. And I know I just finished complimenting the everything out of Five Nights at Freddy's, because it is a really good franchise, but a lot of the scare from the first couple games is entirely jump scares. It's not until the fourth game, I believe, that it gets like atmospheric and a little bit more intense. The rest of the time, or the first three games, it's all jump scares. But I would still say that the games are the story of the games are good enough that the jump scares are forgiven. But I still don't know why jump scares in general are so heavily prevalent. Why are they so accepted? If everyone that I talked to about a dozen people this week about jump scares, or horror games in general, but on jump scares, we unanimously agreed that they're sucky, they're not good, they're lazy, they're cheap. So if of a 13-person focus group, 13 people agreed that jump scares were cheap, that sort of implies to me that that jump scares in general are probably not very acceptable to a lot of people. So it's I feel like I'm just repeating myself, but it just feels cheap and weird that jump scares keep happening and nobody ever says, I say, I object, you know?
Yeah. I think that it has to do with how easy they are to achieve, and how easy it is to achieve kind of a, I don't know, just like a, you know, to get the desired effect from a jump scare. Do you know what I mean? You're trying to freak people out, but you don't actually have to write any significant backstory or, you know, have any kind of real effort. All you have to do is splash something mildly creepy on the screen, and because somebody's not expecting it, you've achieved that scare. So I think that's why it's considered to be a little cheaper of a scare. Anyways, it's not really an authentic emotion. It's just like it's startling. It's not scary so much as it is startling.
Right. Exactly. That's exactly it. I that's how Scream was for me. It was a startling experience. It wasn't a scary experience.
Yeah.
Because that's what the murderer would do, is they would jump out from like nowhere, and you're like, oh my gosh, she's right there. But yeah.
Yeah, and the psychological horror of something like The Exorcism of Emily Rose, like that just creeped the hell out of me, because it didn't. It had a couple of jump scares, but that wasn't its bread and butter.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it was really good, scary as hell, but good.
Yeah. So I think that about wraps up today's episode. It was a pretty long one. I'd say it's about 2.5 hours at this point, and I think we covered all that we wanted to. Again, I didn't. I just talked about a couple games. I didn't analyze anything, but whatever. Forgive me. We ran long. We're in fact over our recording session bracket. But anyway, I enjoyed today's session. What about you, Daniel?
Yeah, actually, you know what I enjoyed? I got into this thing thinking, horror games, a genre that I know next to nothing about. But we ended up talking really long about it, and we actually have some pretty good shared experiences, also some different experiences, and I feel like I feel pretty good about today's episode. You betcha.
So, as we promised last week and the week before that, in fact, or the week before that, yes, is Halo is going to be our next episode. Definitely.
You know it.
I didn't do any research for it up until now because I wanted to focus on the episodes at hand. But hopefully we'll be able to mash together some coherent drivel for you to listen to.
Drivel, I like that.
Yeah. But until then, thank you, Daniel, for watching. Thank you, everyone, for listening. And we'll see you next week.
We'll see you later. Did you know that you just thanked me for watching?
I take it back.
Thanks, Daniel, for watching. Oh, it was funny. I didn't want to mess your roll up, though. All right. Well, you don't want to re-record that, do you? You just want to leave it in and make it funny.
We'll sure.
You're a funny guy.